I think this is one of those topics that if people understood the scale of the problem and the severity, that we would be talking about this every day, along with, immigration and foreign policy. This is, in my view, one of the most important things going on right now. Give us a sense of how widespread the use. So let's just start with SSRIs, antidepressants. How widespread is their use in the United States?
About 14% of the population.
Of the
total population is currently taking an antidepressant medication. Currently, yes. Yeah. And that's actually as of 2014. The numbers have gone up since COVID. So I would say it's probably between 15 to 20% of the population
is currently on those drugs.
Are taking antidepressants on a daily basis.
So that's, compared to my childhood or even 25 years ago, that's a massive increase.
It's an enormous increase. It's likely, last statistics I looked at, I think it's about a 500% increase from where things were in the 90s, in the early 90s.
Has America's collective mental health improved?
No, there's actually more suicides. There's more disability from mental health problems, and teen suicide is higher as well.
Okay. So if there's been a 500% thereabouts increase in the use of these drugs, but more people are killing themselves and the drugs are prescribed in order to make you not kill yourself, then that suggests that we're getting the opposite of the intended effect.
Yeah, big time. Where there's more psychiatric prescribers now. There's more drug prescribing, and the outcomes are actually getting worse. It's what we're doing is not working on a national level.
I'm just going to skip ahead to my opinion, then I'm going to pull back. But that suggests that we should ban the drugs and imprison the people selling them. That's my personal view. But you're the psychiatrist. So what effect? And I will try to reduce my emotional outburst just to that. But it's so shocking when you know the details. Where do these drugs come from? What are they exactly? What is an SSRI? Who invented them? What do they do?
So, SSRIs are kind of the latest iteration of antidepressants. They've been out since the 50s, but Prozac really changed history when it came out in 1987. So this was a drug that was designed to modulate the serotonin system. This is by blocking serotonin reuptake. And so what that does is it increases the amount of serotonin between the neurons, and it actually has a drug effect. It will make people numb or emotionally constricted. And so that's how those drugs are working.
I remember the rollout for Prozac. I think it was on the cover of Time or Newsweek or one of the then popular news weeklies in the United States, and it was hailed as a wonder drug that was going to fix America's psychiatric problems. And it didn't. But it was also described as a drug that helped, as I recall, regulate, and I'm quoting, chemical imbalances in the brain. It was not described as something that would numb you.
Yeah, it's essentially just a story that was sold. The chemical imbalance myth was a story that was sold to doctors and patients to make them feel better about taking drugs for their mood. Because I think intuitively, many people, when you say, hey, I'm unhappy, I'm anxious, I'm depressed, if you went to that person and said, hey, do you want to take a drug that's going to mask those symptoms? Intuitively, people would say, no, I'd rather get to the root cause of that. Sweeping things under the rug usually doesn't work that well.
Yes.
But when you craft a narrative about these drugs fixing a chemical imbalance, like a type 1 diabetic who doesn't have enough insulin, you give them insulin and it kind of sort of like a magic bullet kind of injects itself right into that, pathological process and fixes it. That's kind of a different message. The message to the person is that your brain is defective. There's something wrong with it. And we're going to give you this chemical to bring things up to normal.
Yes.
That's a lot easier for someone to say, well, actually, I need my medicine because I'm broken. But that was essentially a lie. The idea that these drugs, fixed a chemical imbalance simply came from observations that when you give people serotonergic drugs, they can become calmer, they can look less depressed. And so rather than the obvious explanation being, okay, this is a drug effect that we're seeing, they are drugged and that's what we're looking at, people said, oh, well, maybe they just had low serotonin and now they're looking better because we've fixed this chemical imbalance. And so that message has just been grabbed by pharmaceutical industry and, psychiatrists to essentially lull people into this state where they feel more comfortable taking them.
It changed, among other things, the practice of psychiatry completely. And I remember this just because I grew up in an affluent area where people use psychiatrists, not in my family, but everyone else's family. And the idea, it was Freudian psychiatry, and the idea was we are going to treat the root causes. Now, whatever you think of Freudian psychiatry or Freud or whatever, but you'd sit on a couch and talk about your childhood, like that would, by addressing the root cause of your problems, you would make it better. That was the promise of it, whether it worked or not. And then it felt like in one day, right around the time Prozac came out, Freud was being denounced everywhere as a sexist.
Mm-hmm.
And Freudian psychiatry became not just sort of passé, but like affirmatively unpopular.
Mm-hmm.
And the role of psychiatrists was to dispense these drugs. That, from an outsider's perspective, that's what I noticed at the time.
That is what happened. And I think what was going on was all of a sudden you had $1 billion war chest of marketing spend that was trying to seize control of the narrative about medications. And so, Prozac was like a blockbuster. Some people may not remember this, but that was the drug that made Eli Lilly $1 billion company. It was a small company before then. And so at every single level, there was an incentive to change how people thought about distress. No longer was depression and anxiety a complex thing where, there could be relationship issues and problems at work and, problems in your childhood. All of that stuff was, now it was almost bigoted in a way to talk about depression and anxiety as if it had these intuitive social and societal causes. It was now a medical condition. And if you were going to say that it wasn't a medical condition, you weren't taking it seriously and you were stigmatizing people. So drug companies, they would platform, I guess through their influence with the universities and
the media
and the media, they were able to push out this narrative. And so they could shoot down Freudian analysis and therapy. And so the message essentially came out that was, this is a chemical imbalance. These are medical conditions. And if you say anything otherwise, you're stigmatizing the mentally ill.
But it doesn't, that's obviously what happened. I saw it happen, but it doesn't really make internal sense. Like you could say, I think you're depressed because all your relationships are dysfunctional or your parents are horrible or whatever, or you're failing at work. Those are all common causes of sadness for sure, without dismissing or stigmatizing the person or his problems. Like you are taking it seriously. You're just trying to find the actual cause of the problems, right?
Absolutely. I think to logical people that makes sense, but the way that played out in public spaces and in medical schools was that was actually a very backwards and kind of, dismissive thing to, people would say things like, depression just isn't normal sadness. It's a serious biological problem. And so to suggest that, this is just some, life issues going on, relationship issues, you were kind of branded as someone who really, you just didn't get it. You didn't understand, the medical underpinnings of this new disease that was gripping the country and kind of evolving and making people suffer.
So privacy is the basis of freedom. No privacy, no freedom. So with that in mind, we'd like to introduce you to ExpressVPN, a company we've talked about a lot. It's an app that does a very simple and essential thing for you and your family. It reroutes 100% of everything you do online through secure encrypted servers. And that means that data brokers can't watch you as you cruise from website to website, and they can't sell your data. This is a really important issue. Every time people go online, no matter what device they use, unless they're protected, big data harvesters track them. They collect personal information and they sell it to advertisers, scammers, even political groups. ExpressVPN prevents all of that, which is a relief. It protects you and no one else will, and it's really easy to use. Just one click, it works on up to 8 devices at once, one subscription for your whole family. We use it here on the show. We cannot recommend it enough. You get 4 extra months free when you use the link. Just scan the QR code on your screen right now or go to expressvpn.com/Tucker. expressvpn.com/Tucker to get the special offer redeemed. Did the people making these claims understand the medical basis of this illness they were describing?
No. I mean,
right. I mean, that's the irony,
No.
right? So for example, they say it's a chemical imbalance. Did anyone ever describe what balance is?
So, I mean, this is like a white lie that people sort of rationalize to themselves. Because, people have looked at the chemical imbalance and there is a clear way to do it. You can look at the brains of depressed people on autopsy, and you can actually, look at receptor levels and say, is there any changes in the receptors? You can stick needles into people's spine and you can draw out fluid, and you can look at the metabolites of things like serotonin, and you can get depressed people and undepressed people and say, is there any difference in the actual amount of serotonin floating around in the brain? Every time they've done this, they have not found that there is any difference between depressed and undepressed people. But
there's no difference?
There is no difference. Because that's why we don't use any biological markers in the diagnosis of any psychiatric conditions. No brain scans, no blood tests. We can do all of those things. They're not useful because there are no ways, like actual biological ways to differentiate depressed people from undepressed people.
Are you serious?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so, well, that's not a white lie then. That's like a massive whopper. If you're telling me there's a biological basis for anything, but you can't show it, then you're lying.
Yeah.
Or guessing at best.
And the way they justify it was, well, okay, so we haven't found it yet, but it must be a medical problem and we're eventually going to find it. And rather than admitting that, in the meantime, we'll just tell people it's a chemical imbalance because it's just an easy kind of like metaphor for them to understand, and it helps us dish out the drugs without people asking too many questions.
But it's untrue.
It's untrue.
Therefore, physicians should not say that, or they should lose their medical license.
They shouldn't have been saying it.
But yeah. I thought, like strict adherence to reality, honesty, I thought that was like a prerequisite for practicing medicine, getting a license.
Yeah. Well, what's happened in the space of psychiatry is almost like our field has become so overrun with pharmaceutical propaganda that it's not really an issue of truth in a lot of places. It's like a moral issue. Doctors feel the need to almost encourage people to take these medications and cheerlead them onto it. It has been sort of cast as a issue where it's like, these medications are heavily stigmatized. There's a bunch of like rednecks running around telling people to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. That's like the boogeyman that's cast out there.
Seriously?
Yeah. And so, that people are like, there's
there are rednecks out there.
Yeah, there are rednecks out there stigmatizing the mentally ill, saying, your suffering isn't real. And so we need to, kind of peddle this narrative about there being a chemical imbalance and encourage people to take these medications, because mean society out there is telling people to just sit there and suffer in silence and to not take the drugs. And so doctors see it as like almost this is what medical school was like for me in residency. It's like you don't question the drugs, don't question the side effects. You need to encourage people to take them. So it's hinged away from truth, and it has become more of this this moral issue. That at least that's how.
Sounds like a religion.
Yeah, I mean that's what decades of drug company propaganda has done to kind of shape the narrative about how doctors and patients in the media view this issue.
So you go to med school, you decide to become a psychiatrist. You spent, go to residency, all stuff. Did anybody during the whole course of that program note that as the prescription rate for these drugs has risen, so is the suicide rate?
No, not at all. Yeah,
they don't notice that.
They don't bring that up at all.
Isn't the whole point of medicine noticing the connection between behavior and outcome?
Yeah.
People who smoke a ton of unfiltered cigarettes get a higher rate of lung cancer than those who don't. So that's why we know smoking's bad.
Yeah. You just get a version where it's like, yes, mental health is getting worse, but instead of them saying, well, it's because our treatments don't work, what they will say is that, the depression is rising. This is a serious medical condition. It's occurring more and more. And us and our drugs, we are stemming the tide. If not for us doing this, this would be overflowing and getting out of control. And so rather than actually reflecting on the fact that things aren't getting better, they are just saying that, this depression, which didn't really happen that much before, it's just happening more and more and more. And so that's how they justify the worst outcomes.
I get it. I mean, they're children, obviously. It's just you're freaking me out here because these are just kind of basic logical questions.
Mm-hmm.
And the first one is, if depression is rising, and it sounds like it is, why? Why is this happening?
Yeah.
Does anyone ever ask that? Did you hear anyone ask that?
And people do ask this question, and I think it's multifactorial. From my vantage point, depression is rising because our treatments don't work, and they may actually make people worse. But then there's also very legitimate things going on in society that makes depression rise. Housing is unaffordable.
I agree.
There are real things going on that are also making people unhappy.
Society's getting crappier and more dysfunctional. That makes people sad. I get it.
Mm-hmm.
But it just seems like if you're treating an illness, the first question you would ask is where did this illness come from?
Yeah. Yeah.
No?
You would be shocked if you could be a fly on the wall in what happens during psychiatric interviews, because this is what happened. This is what I observed. So I came out of medical school really excited to do psychiatry. It's I'm going to help people with depression and anxiety. I've always been someone who's been really interested in self-help and, philosophy.
Yes.
And then I get started, and during my internship, what I see is that we spend hardly any time actually understanding our patients. The interaction's extremely transactional. You might spend 40 minutes during an intake with someone, but you're hardly going to understand their relationships. You're hardly going to understand their work life. There's very limited time to know what's going on with them health-wise and whether they're using any substances. The visit, it's almost like a checklist. And what I was witnessing is we weren't spending any time really trying to actually understand the people and their lives. And we would just default to using medications because it was really quick. And the way we justify doing this is that we have this book, it's called the DSM, and you can diagnose people essentially off a checklist. If you have 5 out of 9 symptoms, you can say that person is depressed. And so you just ask them what symptoms they have. You don't have to understand the complexity of their life. And then you say, okay, you've got major depressive disorder, and we've got this FDA-approved treatment over here.